So today's task, so the image size that I'm working to is 8 by 10, and I don't think you can see it, but even in this is my printer, and I've printed out the same image twice, and even in doing that, can you tell I've got variations in colours, so I'm sure we all have slight variations in colours that we have from our reference. Right, so depending on how you've got your printed, hopefully, have you all managed to roughly sketch up the landscape on some watercolour paper? Standard watercolour paper, okay? That's what we need. And this image size that I'm producing is 8 by 10, okay? And the first task that we need to do is to have a nice pool of colour. We're going to have 2 pools of colour. So if you look at your landscape reference that you've got, you'll see at the top of the image, it looks like a golden yellow colour. And as it comes down and hits the edge of the mountains, it's looking a fiery orange or a burnt orange colour. So we've got a light colour here and then a slightly deeper colour here, okay? So we're going to start by putting a wash, but because it's such a hot day, if your first task is to mix 2 plates of colour, okay? So on one of my plates, so this is my light colour, okay, which is sort of, and it's up to you how yellowy you want it. I've actually made mine quite golden yellow, I suppose you can say, orangey yellow. And then I've got a second puddle for the darker colour, okay? So make sure you've got 2 nice big pools of colour before we get cracking with the skull. So we're not worrying about, you're just going to concentrate on the skull at the top, okay? What I would like to find a primary clear yellow that looks a bit like cadmium yellow, but it isn't opaque. So what you need to get is a nice bright clear primary yellow. Okay, I'm not using my cadmium because it's quite strong, but if that's all you've got, then that's all you've got. Okay, orange yellow could be good because it's that gold colour that you're after, isn't it? And then what I want you to do is to have a little scrap bit of paper or and just wipe it on your screen, okay? And then you can put it on your board on the back of it, so you can see what the colour looks like. So it's whether you like the look of it and whether it's the white tone. Okay, so this screen at the moment is slightly milky in colouring. Whoops, I need to put a mark on my picture now. Okay, so this is going to help us give you an indication of how you can get the colour range from going to a nice sort of golden yellow colour. At the top it's almost like Naples yellow, okay, going down into a more golden colour and then going down into deep colour, okay? So I've got 2 plates. One plate's got the yellowy colour on it, and the other colour I've put has got the more burnt colour, which is actually drying in this hot sun. So even though I'm in the shade, it's actually drying. So I'm just going to pick up a bit more. So the dark colour is quinacridone magenta with my yellow, and it makes it sort of a fiery orange colour. And then do a test wipe, which I've just done, to see what it dries up. It's always going to dry a bit lighter, isn't it? But you want to make sure you've got the colour in that you're happy with, the way that it's going to work. Okay, so I've used the dark quinacridone magenta for the dark colour, and I've used opera rose for the light colour, but only a speck because I want it to have that nice golden colour. But if you don't have those colours, you could use, what a classic, there's Windsor yellow, Indian yellow. The main thing is to have a nice pink that you can add to them, or if not, you're going to have to use like a Windsor orange, something like that. So you're looking at these nice golden burnt tones, hopefully, that you can see. All right. So have you all got the image or the photo reference by your side? Okay, so I'm going to take this away now then, and I'm going to get my board up. So this is my rough painting, okay, that I've done on practice paper. And if you can see, I've been doing lots of marks on here to work out the colour combinations that I want. So, so I get the graduation that I'm after. All right. So because we're going to be starting with the sky, you're going to need a big watercolor brush for the sky. Nice. And what we're going to do is we're going to paint some water on it, but when we get to the mountain, so when we get to the silhouette here, you can change down to a small brush, and I want you just with a small brush, this is just with water, remember, you just go along the edge to make sure you get this nice perfect wiggly edge. Okay, we're going to do that with water first, and the reason why is because we're going to be doing big sweeps. When we go down, if we've pre-wetted this and this is all the watercolor is going to run down into exactly into the crevices that we want. Okay, all right. So are you all ready for me to do it? So I'm going to start painting with water. And as I get close to the bottom, that's it. So I don't need to worry about it. I'm going to pick up a smaller brush. Well, this one's actually, as long as it's got a good point, this is a number 7 sable brush that I've got. And I'm now going to just paint round the mountain top so that it's perfect, and just scribble up to the top, because I want to make sure I've got the outline perfect. And this, because we're doing it now in water, this means we're going to get a perfect mountain top. Okay. And we don't need to get any tiswals or panic about it, because the watercolour is just going to run into the crevices and it's just going to be exact. Okay. Obviously in some watercolour paintings that's not crucial, but for this particular exercise that I'm doing with you, okay, this way it means that everything is perfect the way we want it. I'm just going across, and because it's so hot it's going to dry quite quickly. So it's not, I've got Puddle here, so I'm just going to move it across. So I want the surface of the watercolour paper to be shiny. Okay. All right. But I don't want huge pools at the bottom. I just want it to be shiny and wet. Okay. Just check that that's the way I want it. So the whole area of the mountain range now is all glistening and shiny. Okay. And so what we're going to be doing is we're going to put light colour at the top, and then we're going to change to a stronger colour at the bottom. Okay. So I'm probably going to be using this at the top, and I might carry on, or I might quickly pick up a smaller brush as we get to the bottom. Well, this is still quite fat, so if you don't have that, then you could probably use perhaps use a brush like this as we get to the bottom. All right. So because this is a big thirsty brush, it's going to scoop up this plate straight away, and you can just do a nice big sweep up there. And then halfway through, I'm going to start to pick up the other colour and go across. And then I'm going to pick up the other colour. The colour paint's lifted at the bottom. Fine. It's so hot that my board's actually lifted. Do some tape on this. All right. then you stop when you're fairly happy with the graduation, and you can see that it runs where you want it to go. That's like, just let that settle a little bit. There you go. So now I've got a nice, probably a nice blended sky, graduating from golden yellow at the top, going down to the more burnt orange colours at the bottom. All right. So I'm deliberately tipping mine backwards and forwards because I want to have that dark halo on mine, but I don't want it to settle in too much of a strong dark ridge. So that's why I'm tipping it. So I'm going to get that halo, and then I'm going to get some tape and tape down my paper because it's actually been buckling because this is lifted on the edge here, which you can't see. The main thing is not to be tempted, especially now that it's beginning to settle, is not to be tempted to fiddle with it. So I can tip it, okay, so I get this nice halo that I'm after on the edge mountaintop. But I would, if I bring this down a little bit, I would completely ruin this sky now if I started wiping with it because it's beginning to settle. If when it dries you think, and which is this one is in danger because of the foot or the weather, if with this when it dries you decide it's too light, you don't need to worry about it. I'm just going to tip that again. You can always glaze this again once it's up. But you must make sure it's absolutely bone dry if that's what you're going to do. All right. I'm just tipping that away, make sure that settles. There we go. So you should get a nice soft graduation. So I've got quite a nice gentle sort of Naples yellow colour at the top, and it's going down into a golden orange at the bottom. I'll obviously email this image to you when it's dry because obviously I appreciate you can't quite see the colours properly. But so if you look down here, some of the water on the reflection at the bottom also looks the same colour as the sky. Okay, you see that? So what we're going to do is do a very weak wash with what we've got left in the paint. So it needs to be fairly pale and fairly weak. And just do a weak wash where we see the water, not at the very top where it's grey, but we'll just do the middle section. So I'll just show you now. Oh, that's just needs to tip that again. That's it, sorry. Just getting rid of a little puddle on this side here. Just tipping it away. It's looking like a very pale sort of peachy colour. So you can use the same colour but use it in a weak solution. Okay. And you can go down to a smaller brush and we can just glaze in the colour. Okay. Because it's a fairly small, narrow area, I don't think you need to glaze it, but if you feel more comfortable softening it first. So I've just got this sort of very weak sort of peachy colour that looks a bit like squash. So I'm just going to put that colour in there. And then where else does it go? Oh, it goes across there. And it goes across there. You don't, I'm just following the lines because it helps me. And then where you've got a softened edge, because we don't want lines, if I wet it with water, it's just going to soften it. So it's giving you that blending time that we need, because it's looking almost like contaminated water that I talk about across here. This colour is the same colour as the sky. On my printout, it looks as though it's peach. At the very top, I'm not painting. I'm not at the top. I'm not painting the horizon line. My horizon line is up here, so I'm not painting I'm not painting the edge of the sea. I'm in the front at the bottom. Okay, so I'm at the very front at the very bottom of the picture, where the trees are. The edge of the trees are. So I'm just painting that bit down very low. Okay, and I've actually almost, because I'm in my rush, I've actually gone over a bit more there, so that's cool. And then up here, this is my horizon line, which looks like a pale sort of Payne's grey, which we will be using. So if I just put that in quickly, you'll be able to see. So this area here is my horizon, where, well, not horizon, where the water is. This is the edge of the water up here, okay? And as long as I smudge this out with water, okay, it doesn't matter that I haven't painted this yet, because I have blended that edge out completely with water. So the rest of this area that I should be painting looks greyish. If I had lots of time and I wasn't hurrying for you, you could potentially glaze the whole, you could potentially do a very sort of weak peach wash in all of the area of the water if you wanted to, or yellow over the water. Let it get bone dry and then put the Payne's grey on top. But I'm just speeding things up for you a little bit. So I'm just going to draw, there's a stronger peach colour down at the bottom here, which is, oh yeah, it's got some nice streaks down here. So let's just pull that bit down there. So I might not actually bother to put the trees in at all. And then I'm going to soften that sharp edge with water so that it settles, because we'll be putting some other colours on top. So as long as you soften it with water, then you can blend it all away. Now that we've done that, we will be changing our plate, wiping our plate clean, and we're going to be mixing up the colour for the mountains. So if you look again at my rough reference, I was starting off with Payne's grey as my base colour, and then I was thinking that I might try and tweak it with slightly with some blue colours. So if I pick up my Payne's grey, and it's obviously personal preference, it's entirely up to you, but I'm using Payne's grey as my base. So there's lots of ways you could do the exercise on these mountains, because when you're looking at this, well, looking at this image, the mountains look so close in tone, in tonal values. It's almost very difficult to distinguish between the different mountains. Whereas in this other one that I've outlined for you, this one looks lighter in the way that it goes. So what you can do, if you had more time, you could say, well, I'm going to do this as a layering exercise. I'm going to paint the entire mountain range one colour, let it get bone dry. Then I'm going to paint the same colour again on the second ridge of the mountain range, let it get bone dry. Then go down to the third layer, and then go down to the fourth layer and build up it in layers. Okay, that is an optional way that you could build up a depth of tone in a layering process. We're not going to be doing that, because we're going to tweak the Payne's grey colour as we go down. So I will start to change it for you. It's obviously personal preference as to what you want to do. I'm starting off, as I say, with the Payne's grey. I'm then going to add a little bit of what colour? Oh, a little bit of ultramarine to it. You could even add purples to it if you want to. But the main thing is obviously you want to have a slight graduation and a slight change in colours as we go. I'm now picking up my Payne's grey, and because I want to make it slightly bluey grey, I've added a little bit of ultramarine to it. But you could be ultramarine, you could use sort of an indigo or Prussian blue colour, or you could keep it more cobalt blue. It doesn't really matter as long as you've got the variations that you're happy with. It's not, doesn't really matter too much. So again, use your scrap bit of paper and do your little test, okay, to see if you like the colour that you're after. All right. So you've got that nice sort of greyish colour going on. And then I'm just going to start off with this one, okay. And as long as you've got your brush nice loaded, just go up against it. So I'm treating this as I would any glaze. I'm starting at the top. Okay, I've got a nice puddle. I'm making sure I'm going to the edge of the horizon, and then I'm dragging down my puddle to the point that I want. So it's going down to this point here, and then it fizzles off and disappears. Okay, so I've got that big puddle there, which I don't want. Get my brush, which is clean, and I just touch it. And now it's taken out the excess water that I don't want. There we go. Okay, so that's my first little piece of mountain. Okay, so I'm now going to go off and I'm going to do the middle one. All right, so you need to have a fairly small brush now, or smallish brush. Okay, you could go down to perhaps a number 6. And if you think it's easier for you to wet it first with water, you can do. Just remember that that will obviously dilute it slightly as well. So where's the next one? It is that one here. I'm just trying to. Okay, so where does it go? Oh, it's fairly flat. Can't actually see very well my pencil mark the edge of this, so I'm just going to roughly make it up a little bit. Give it like that, some sort of shape like that. There we go. So that it makes sense. Okay. Now I'm going to let those dry. Okay. So for the next layer, we can again tweak that. So change your colour slightly. So for my exercise, what I was doing, I was experimenting with adding a little bit more blue, or you could have a little bit more purple. It's up to you. I'm just going to experiment by changing. So the main thing is to very, very slightly change the colour. Just a very subtle, very slight difference. And when you're, because this one's a larger area, okay, you want to have a fairly big-ish brush. So if you find you can't, worried about doing the glaze because of the hot weather, you can wet it a little bit if you want to, but I'm probably just going to gradually work down in the glaze. So I'm going to introduce the colour at the top, and I'm going to gradually pull it down. I've just gone over a bit there, so I'm just tickling that away. So if you have a damp brush, can you see I've just wiggled that mistake away? It's just wiggled it away. Just soften that edge because it shouldn't be that crisp. Okay, so that's with a damp brush, and I've just wiggled my mistake away a little bit. So now we can let that get bone dry. So this colour's dried too dark, a little bit too dark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to match it and make that one the dark as well, and it's going to make more sense. And I'm going to bring some other colours in across here. So I will be repeating that process again for the next mountain range going down. And again, I'm going to slightly change the colour. I can make it a little bit more blue or a little bit more purple in the way that it's going. So again, the same rules apply with the mountain range. If when it dries, you find that something is too light. So for example, in one of my photographic references, there's hardly any difference between these two. So I have a couple of options. Why I can, once this is bone dry, I can just put exactly the same colour on over the top again to darken it down, can't I? I've got that option. Okay, I can darken this one down. But if I wanted to lift this out, it's going to be streaky, isn't it? So it's going to be difficult for me to make it look flat. I think next week probably Bill needs to, I might try moving my camera. There we are, that looks better like that for me anyway. So we're now going to go down this one, and then there is an actual little tiny little narrow ridge here. So again, you can change the colour of this mountain very slightly, make it slightly more blue or make it slightly more, as we're going to go down into the area which on the photograph looks black. Okay, I'm not going to paint, I'm not going to go for black. There's lots of options when, if you look at other watercolour paintings of sunsets, sometimes people will go, instead of going down into black, they'll go into perhaps a deep navy blue or a deep purple or a deep sepia colour. So it's your preference as to what colours obviously you'd like to use or go down. I'm sort of going into bluey tones at the moment in order to get the contrast that I want. It's obviously entirely up to you, but the main thing is to try and get these tones. Try and get the tones working, so you can see the similarities between the picture on the screen and the photograph. Okay, so again, I'm using my Payne's grey as a base, and used to say you could pick up some ultramarine or pick up some indigo or Prussian blue or anything, any sort of in those sort of colour areas that you want to sort of get that sort of bluey greyish look that you're after. So again, I'm just going to check my colour. I'm adding more water and I'm adding more paint as well. And I'm going to, if you're not sure, because it's so hot, I could just do a few quick strokes. Okay, and then in about a few seconds, this is going to be very dry. You can see it almost drying as I talk. Okay, and then once it's settled, you can then work out, oh, okay, is this colour that I've mixed dark enough? Is it contrasting enough? And I'll be able to tell you in a few seconds. So it's slightly bluer, okay, but it could easily go, I think, I could even add a tiny little bit more colour to it. It's just trying to spend the time to get these subtle changes that you're after. I mean, normally I wouldn't rush things quite as much as I am at the moment, but we want to obviously try and dry hands on. So now you can see that that's beginning to dry. It's looking quite similar in tone to that one, so I might go slightly darker. See if that goes a bit darker. It's a little bit stronger. So let's whack that up a bit more. I want to make sure that the difference going. So I'm making my colours stronger. I'm thinking this colour's perhaps not quite strong enough. Let's see if I've gone too strong. Yeah, I think that's much better. It's going to work better. Okay. So again, I'm not going to pre-wet it. I'm going to drag my glaze across. And because, as you know, I'm left-handed, I'm going to start on the right-hand side. So, picking up my loaded brush, scooping across the edge, okay, pulling it up to the edge, dragging it down. Oops. So can you see how I'm dragging this colour across? I'm not returning to beginning, and see how much stronger that colour is. So I've got the contrast that I'm after. Okay. I mean, it's not super critical now, the edge of the mountains. I'm rushing it a little bit. I mean, if you wanted to, if you were doing this, you could start to feed in slightly different colours at the bottom. That's how you can get sort of halos and all sorts of shapes going on in mountains. But for this, I don't know, I just fancied making these mountains quite flat and quite stylized, because I think that's what the picture sort of said to me, I suppose. Be a little bit careful. I've got these little dots, which is a bit of a shame after me just saying that. Some of those are going to make a mark, those ones. Yeah, they are. All right. So now I'm going to the straight horizon line on this edge here. So that's what happens when you rush slightly. That's my edge. Yep, that's my edge. So see this. Well, I have to disguise those in the next layer. So, right. Let's soften these edges. See, there we go, that's okay now. Oh, this isn't. Oh, that's annoying. Right, so I'm going to have to very quickly do what I say don't do. So don't do this, guys. See if I can rectify it. Ooh, a bit risky. It's going to have to be slightly textured mountain. I had to do that because of the way it was going. Oh well. Let's make this more textured as well then. So now, because of the way that those marks were going, I've had to make this a textured wash. But you could make yours flat. But I had to do that because of the way I could see it was going. So look, I'm doing lots of streaks now. Can you see how it makes more of a streaky wash because I'm upsetting everything? But if you do it now, while it's all in the wet stage, you can make it look like a textured mountain because it's coming into the foreground. So did you see those two pale stars that were beginning to appear? Yeah, so that's why I put that wash on to disguise all of that. So now that that's settling and I've worked into it, now I've turned my mountain into a more textured one, and I've got away with it because I did it quick. All right, but you can continue and keep yours flat. So now that I've made that dark, I've actually got to go back and put another glaze on this one when it's bone dry, because this is gone really dark now, hasn't it? And this one's not lighter. So once this is bone dry, I'm going to put another wash on this one here to level my mountains up. You may have more of an equal range going with your mountains. So once this is bone dry, I'm going to put another wash on this mountain range in the center here. What we can do, if you want to decide you want to even this one up because it's drying very light, as long as we let the other layers get bone dry, we can make this darker. There won't be any hassle. It'll be just repeating the same process again. So when you're doing a sky, okay, if you want to get a softer blended edge, I've actually got sunlight now on my picture. I have to move my I'll have to pull my desk forward, I think. So when you're doing a wash, it doesn't matter what size brush it is, if you always make sure that you drag across, okay, so actually no, you're all right-handed, so you would probably be doing opposite to me. You'd start on that side and go to that side. You have that little puddle, and then you drag it across again to the puddle moves down, and then again, okay? And then that way you capture all of that puddle, and then you get the smoother graduation like we've got with this one. You can do because it's wet, you can do lots of sweeps left and right and then gradually bring it down, and then that way you don't get the uneven streaky bit. You could, as long as it's bone dry, you could glaze the sky again. Okay, exactly the same procedure for this one, because this mountain, now that it's dried, I've now got this one settling, okay, which according to the picture, I suppose you could say, if you squinted your eyes at it, it's about the same, okay? But this one is definitely visually saying, I'm too light, isn't it, at the moment, okay? So as long as we let this get bone dry, we can get away with it. It's not a problem. And I've still got one more mountain to put at the bottom. I don't know if you're all in the last one. I haven't done my last one yet. So, yeah, this is dry. So I pick up, so what I would do is I'll do another glaze on this one. So that means I need to add some more water to my plate, cool it down ever so slightly to make a very subtle difference in the colour. You don't have to, the main thing is with the layers, okay? So if I put this layer on now, because it's quite a watery mix, it's just enough to mix it. And you could do this 2 or 3 times until you're happy with the colour that you want. So now I'm going to do exact repeat of this one. I'm going to pick up my colour, okay, and just do it, as I say, an exact repeat. So scoop it up in exactly the same as I did before, over the same mountain range, the same spots, pulling it across. Okay, so I'm tweaking my mountain range to make it a little bit more closer in tonal value. Okay, just tip that puddle up over there. There we go. And I've got a nice big puddle on the and all I'm doing is just dragging it across. So now it's looking darker and not sticking out so much, looking a bit more bit more natural. There you go. That looks a bit better, doesn't it? Right. So it's not sticking out on its Todd. So it's just a complete repeat. So I'm now going to go down to the bottom one now because that's dry. Which, as we said before, you could make it slightly more bluey, slightly more purpley. But the main thing is that we want this one to be stronger in colour, don't we? So because I want the colours to, or the tones to be quite strong, I'm sort of going, I don't know, I think it looks quite good with this to be sort of on the greyish bluish tones. So here is my mountain range, and I'm just going to colour in the last bit. In fact, I've almost gone for blue. The horizon line does look straight, and I suppose you could mask it off if you wanted it to be perfect, but I haven't. So I'm just relying on my hand so I'm resting my hand on the surface, and I'm just relying on the fact that I'm just going to drag my hand across. And hopefully I'm not knocking the camera too much. So I'm just dragging it down. So I'm just trying to do it slowly with the side of my hand. I suppose you could protect it with masking fluid if you wanted to be absolutely precise. But for speed, I haven't done that. So I'm just dragging it with my hand to get that edge the way I want it to be. So that's all of my mountains filled in. So now we are ready to start mixing up in more of a greyish colour. So with your Payne's grey, if you add a yellow to it, or the golden yellow, a smidge of it to your Payne's grey, we're gonna start to look at blending a bit further down, and then also we're also going to be looking at the landscape. So with my definition, which I seem to have lost, I'm so careful in my drawing that I can't actually see it. So we have got a shape there and a flat bit there, and then we've got, so I'm just redefining the mountain age because it's actually lost on mine. Yeah, so it's that bit. There we are. That's got it defined a bit better because I couldn't actually see what I was doing. So, for the land, we're a bit down here. Okay. And then we've got this bit down here, haven't we? So I'm marking this up, so hopefully it's a bit clearer for you to see. So you don't need to worry too much. Because I've got a nice greyish bluish feel with my Payne's grey, I'm now going to continue that for the land. Okay, but now we're ready to go more concentrated. So you could go slightly more purpley, or you could pick up some, you know, it's really up to you where you want to go. If you remember me talking about colour theory and mountains and how cool colours recede, I can start to bring things darker but slightly warmer in the foreground. So that's going to bring the colours visually forward towards us. So if you keep Payne's grey as your base, I'm thinking I might pick up some of my alizarin. Okay, so I've still got a dark tone, but it's looking slightly warmer because I want to give it a contrast. You could equally, if you wanted to, think about picking up some burnt umber or sepia, or if you wanted to, it's entirely your preference. It's just a way of ensuring that the mountain in the foreground, which look black, are slightly warmer so that they come forward. All right. So if I just show you this on my tester, you see it's a lot warmer. No, you can't see it's a lot warmer. Sorry, this is the camera quality. It's actually a slightly warmer tone. Okay, and that is looking too weak, so it needs to be a lot darker. But the main thing is to, I would say, make it colourful, really. I think because of the way that time is going, we're probably going to be finishing this next week. So I hope that'll be all right with you. Okay, because we're going to need to finish off dragging on the surface, and we've got all of these pink tones in the sea to do, as well as a lot more. Okay. But the main thing that you need to remember and I'll do a little bit of the land now for you, okay, well I won't do the whole thing. The main thing to remember as you're dragging it down is to sort of spend your time, and if it's too light, don't worry about it, you can always put another layer on, and so you start to get the tonal values that you want. Okay, so here's my colouring here, which I think may be too light, but I think it's better to be too light than too dark. Let's see if we can bring that up a little bit more. So my Payne's Grey's looking slightly very dark and quite sort of purplish colour. Okay, I'm not pre-wetting it with water at all. I'm just going to dive straight in. Okay, and then just drag the shape like that. Okay, it doesn't matter, they don't have to be exact. The main thing is, as I'm holding my brush, it's got a nice point to it, to suggest the edges of this rocks that are jutting out of the sea, like that. And then again, I'm going to start to drag. So, you know, that's the thing that you want to watch for. Okay, so I'm trying to dot my brush around a bit at the top so I get a nice coarse edge. I don't want it to be flat, too flat, and then I can start to drag it up. Okay, I'm just beginning to pull it down, and then I'm just dragging it across. I haven't bothered with the little tree that we can see. It's up to you whether you want to put it in. I've just done that, and I'm just dragging it over and over and over. And I'm not going back up to the top, I'm just making sure that I've got it loaded so I can work the puddle that I've got, just to flick it out so I've got the edges that I want. And I'm just flicking across. Now I've got an awkward edge here that I don't like, so what I'm going to do is pull that out. Because I'll be able to tweak that when I do the next layer. Right, let's bring that down a bit more so I can again tweak or change. It's up to you. You could keep the colour the same, or you could again very slightly tweak it. So I'm adding a tiny little bit more purple to mine now. So I'm getting all these really nice purplish tones. And I'm just going to start to wiggle in a suggestion of this land that we can see. Oh yeah, let's do that. Let's just pull that like a bit. And then there's that bit. Oh yeah, what's that bit now? So I'm going to let this settle now, and we're going to finish this next week. So when you've, what we'll do next week is we'll fill in with the grey, and we'll start to bring in more of the finer textures that are going on the top. This mountain here in my picture is coming up lighter than the one behind. So I will be doing another layer of colour on my bottom mountain so that it makes more visual sense to make it more purple coming along here, okay? And then I will probably bring in some more details through next week. So you're going to need a nice fine brush that you're going to be using. So you can see, and then what we will be doing is we'll be looking at mixing a grey tone. So if we're looking at Payne's Grey as a basis for this area here, okay, we'll look at and see what colour that is, okay, on its own. If we find that it's in my photograph, I appreciate all our printers look different, but already in my head I'm thinking I might tweak the Payne's Grey with a little bit of the orange or a little bit of the golden yellow colour to make it more of a yellowy grey. Do you remember how I've told you about how 3 primary colours make a grey, or if you use a purple and a yellow you can make a grey? So because we want to get that golden look that's in the sea, the grey that I'm going to be using here is probably going to be, it needs to have that undertones of that peach in it. Okay, so that's my thinking behind it, rather than just having it a standard Payne's Grey. I want to make sure that this grey tone here is a different type of grey to the one that's in the mountains.